Buckingham Palace has tonight announced the death of the oldest member of the royal family, Catherine, the Duchess of Kent.
Buckingham Palace releasing a statement confirming she died at her home in Kensington Palace.
Imagine firing off a heartfelt condolence email and getting hit with radio silence. And oh boy, that's exactly what happened to Harry. He thought he was sending a touching message, but instead of a warm response, he got nothing. Zilch. Silence.
It's really quite sad.
For most of us. It's an awkward moment, but when Prince Harry got ignored by the Duke of Kent, it wasn't just awkward, it was humiliating. This wasn't just anyone ghosting him. This was the Duke of Kent. And Harry? He reportedly lost it.
Buckingham Palace announced today that the oldest member of the royal family had passed away. The official notice, as is tradition, was displayed on the railings outside.
After the royal family's sad announcement, he didn't just feel awkward, he reportedly lost it. Can you blame him for feeling sidelined? Well, yes and no, because Harry has a way of turning every private family moment into a full-blown spectacle.
But apparently for me, that doesn't matter.
And honestly, who can be surprised? Exactly. Who's shocked anymore?
Is there even a way back for him as the prodigal son?
And who cares?
Harry and Meghan have turned silence into their ultimate enemy because silence doesn't sell Netflix deals.
Those close to the Duke say he hasn't given up on finding a way to bring his family to Britain. Sure, he'll find a way.
Silence doesn't headline tabloids, and silence doesn't fuel the poorest narrative they've been milking since stepping off the royal stage.
People don't care anymore. Harry has burnt his bridges fully with the British public.
So of course, Harry took the Duke's silence as an insult. This wasn't just a snub to Harry, it was an insult. Yes, an insult, a rejection.
If you open the door, even a tiny crack, these two are going to keep on damaging your reputation.
A rejection, another reminder that the palace doesn't play by his Hollywood script.
That I won't be able to show, my children my homeland.
And while the Duke of Kent kept dignity and mourning, Harry once again dragged grief into drama. It should have been about respect for the Duchess. But no, Harry managed to make it about himself.
She wasn't a rebel. She did what she wanted, but she was always very conscious of her position and, never wanted to upset the Queen, and nor did she upset her.
Turning what should have been respect for the late Duchess into yet another performance about himself. And here's the kicker.
Because Harry is so pig-headed and arrogant and stubborn when it comes to that I don't think he'll ever.
But here's the twist. That silence may have spoken louder than any email ever could. And trust me, what comes next will leave you questioning whether Harry has completely lost the plot. The Duchess's passing was supposed to bring dignity, compassion, and quiet remembrance. But Harry, he just couldn't help himself.
He regularly handed out trophies. She supported a charity for homeless people.
The passing of the Duchess of Kent should have been a moment that united the royal family in quiet dignity. She was known for her compassion, her decades of service, and her ability to stay out of the circus of scandals that now seem to define the monarchy's younger generation. Exactly. The public adored her because she wasn't a drama magnet.
Just simply Mrs. Kent. She was just part of the staff team on that day when she came into school and taught.
The public remembered her for her charity work and her warmth, not for grabbing headlines, not for tantrums, and certainly not for turning grief into a Netflix pitch. But while the nation mourned with respect, Harry reportedly found a way to twist even this solemn occasion into a stage for his own frustrations. And instead of reflecting on her legacy, what did he do?
I learned more from these children than I ever taught them. They taught me, it's just indescribable. I mean that absolutely sincerely.
Instead of reflecting on the Duchess's legacy, insiders suggest Harry became fixated on his email, the condolence message he expected to be acknowledged instantly. Never mind that the Duke of Kent has always been a man of restraint, someone who upholds traditions that prize silence over spectacle. Exactly. The Duke was carrying on tradition, but Harry couldn't stomach the silence. For Harry, if the spotlight isn't on him, then something must be wrong. It's as if he cannot comprehend that grief sometimes demands privacy, not publicity. The irony is painful. A duchess remembered for her quiet strength, overshadowed by a grandson who can't resist turning every family moment into a tabloid drama. While the Duke held on to quiet dignity, Harry fumed like a teenager left on red. But here's the kicker. His fury was just warming up. When news broke of the Duchess of Kent's passing, Harry reportedly rushed to send a condolence email to the Duke of Kent. On the surface, that sounds like a thoughtful gesture, but the reality, it required less of compassion and more of performance. Boom. There it is, the performance. On the outside, sending a condolence email looked noble, even respectful. But deep down, insiders say it wasn't really about honoring the Duchess. It was about Harry craving acknowledgement. But here's the kicker. His fury was just warming up. When news broke of the Duchess of Kent's passing, Harry reportedly rushed to send a condolence email to the Duke of Kent. On the surface, that sounds like a thoughtful gesture, but the reality, it requires less of compassion and more of performance. That's the problem right there. Harry wants the world to believe he's about privacy, yet every move screams, "Look at me!" The Duke of Kent isn't Meghan's PR manager. He's an elder statesman, a man shaped by tradition, not tweets and cameras. But Harry? He sat there refreshing his inbox like a teenager waiting for a crush to text back. And when the silence dragged on, so did his frustration. The man who ran from Britain because he couldn't stand the institution's toxicity suddenly seemed desperate for that same institution to notice him. Hypocrisy much. Instead of mourning the Duchess quietly like the rest of the family, Harry twisted the lack of a reply into a royal-level crisis. And let's be honest, it wasn't grief anymore. It was pure ego. A real condolence is selfless, right? But for Harry, it was another audition, another chance to rake in sympathy points, another chapter in the soap opera he insists on starring in. And when that email went unanswered, that's when resentment boiled over. Insiders who know the Duke weren't surprised, though. This is a man who's been defined by decades of service and tradition. In his world, silence during mourning isn't rude. It's respect. It's how royals show dignity. But Harry didn't see it that way. He took silence as the ultimate slap in the face. Instead of recognizing the Duke's restraint, Harry stewed, convinced he'd been iced out. The brutal truth? Not every lack of response is rejection. But Harry, used to privilege and constant validation, just couldn't accept that he wasn't the center of attention. To him, silence wasn't protocol, it was betrayal. And that's where the entitlement really showed. The Duke's silence reflected humility, the very values the Duchess embodied. But Harry, he raged like a reality TV star who'd been cut from the final episode. It wasn't about the Duchess anymore. It was about his wounded pride. Whispers started swirling. Harry's frustration was growing, and it wasn't just a private annoyance. It was humiliating. He was spiraling over an unanswered email while the rest of the family kept their composure. Here's where it gets messy. The silence should have been the end of the story. A private note, respectfully sent, respectfully received, and that's it. But Harry? He turned it into a full-blown bonfire of resentment. Instead of reading the room, he read his inbox. Over and over. And when no reply came, insiders say he spiraled. The truth is harsh. Harry wasn't upset because the Duke was rude. He was upset because the silence reminded him of the one thing he dreads most: irrelevance. Grief should take priority over emails. But in Harry's mind, he takes priority over grief. That's why he kept pushing, almost as if acknowledgement from the Duke was a badge he desperately needed. It's tragic, really. A man who walked away from royal duty to be free is still chained to needing royal validation. And the timing couldn't have been worse. The media was circling, waiting for the tiniest crack. And when they got wind of his tantrum, the headlines exploded. Suddenly, Harry was front-page news not for compassion, but for fury. When the tabloids caught wind of Harry's outrage, they didn't hold back. They plastered him across front pages as the angry exile who turned grief into another circus act. While Britain quietly remembered a beloved Duchess, Harry was painted as the man-child raging over an unanswered email. The contrast was brutal. The Duke of Kent stayed dignified. The rest of the royals kept calm. And Harry? He became the headline nobody could ignore. Every newspaper sharpened the same picture: petty, entitled, and hopelessly out of step with royal tradition. And here's the thing, it was predictable. Harry has been feeding the press with grievances for years. Now every meltdown is open season. He didn't even need enemies to stir drama. He handed it to them himself. And Meghan, she wasn't left out either. Whispers linked her to the narrative, fueling the Sussex Circus storyline tabloids adore. In the end, Harry's fury over silence created the loudest noise of all. It echoed across tabloids, breakfast TV, and social feeds. And just when he thought it couldn't get worse, social media piled on. Twitter went wild with memes mocking the ghosted prince. TikTok creators had a field day, making skits of Harry refreshing his inbox like a lovesick teenager. Instagram accounts roasted him as the world's most sensitive royal. Hashtags like #inboxdrama and #snubbed Sussex trended, not out of sympathy, but mockery. Even younger audiences, usually more forgiving, joined the laughter. For them, Harry's meltdown wasn't tragic, it was comedy gold. Older generations rolled their eyes, calling it another case of Harry dishing out criticism, but crumbling when ignored. And here's the kicker. Social media thrives on humiliation. Harry served it on a platter. What he saw as betrayal, the internet devoured as entertainment. Instead of mourning the Duchess, people were memeing her grandson into oblivion. Once again, Harry lost control of the narrative. Because when the world sees you less as a prince and more as a punchline, your reputation doesn't just crack, it collapses. This unanswered email wasn't just embarrassing, it was another brick in the wall Harry has built between himself and the royals. Every feud, every public gripe, every tantrum, it's all widened the gap. Instead of using this moment of loss to bridge divides, Harry dug the trench deeper. The Duke's silence wasn't cruel. It simply revealed how fragile Harry's standing has become. He torched his bridges and now acts shocked when no one rushes to comfort him. The royals live by restraint. Harry lives by resentment. And every clash leaves him looking more like the outsider, begging for recognition from a table he flipped over himself. Critics say Meghan's shadow looms over it all. Together, they've turned victimhood into a brand. But here's the problem. Brands built on burned bridges eventually run out of fuel. The Duchess of Kent left a legacy of compassion, humility, and quiet service. She gave decades without demanding applause. She embodied dignity. And Harry, the complete opposite. Where she was discreet, he's disruptive. Where she gave quietly, he demands loudly. It's almost insulting that in the shadow of her passing, Harry managed to redirect the spotlight back to himself. The Duchess will be remembered for her humanity. Harry risks being remembered for tantrums. By throwing fits over an unanswered email, he didn't just disrespect royal protocol. He dishonored the very values the Duchess spent her life upholding. She showed that true influence doesn't need a megaphone. Harry shows that without constant noise, he fears irrelevance. One left a legacy of quiet strength. The other seems intent on leaving behind chaos. So what started as a moment of mourning spiraled into yet another reminder of how far Harry has drifted from everything the monarchy claims to represent. The Duchess's passing should have spotlighted compassion and unity. Instead, it exposed ego, entitlement, and the gaping divide between tradition and Harry's brand of self-pity. Silence should have spoken respect. Harry turned it into a tantrum, and once again, the headlines weren't about the Duchess's legacy. They were about Harry's meltdown. At this point, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Every royal event, every private exchange somehow mutates into Harry versus the palace. And the more he demands recognition, the more he looks like a man shouting into the void. History will remember the Duchess for her grace and service, but Harry, he risks being remembered as the royal who couldn't stop raging against shadows. And if you thought this was messy, wait until you see what insiders revealed about that infamous royal wedding. We've covered it all right here on Star Spotlight. Trust me, you won't want to miss those bombshells.